the theory of evolution itself doesn't necessarily exclude God. I mean, even if it is true that things evolved the way that modern narratives about evolution claim, the fact is that this evolution could very well be directed by an intelligent maker. And Allah tells us, وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَطْوَارًا. Allah gives many indications throughout the Qur'an that in fact the way that the earth and heavens were created were not an overnight. It wasn't just an instant, but in fact there was a dynamic. And in fact Allah tells us that there was first the creation of the elixir of life, water. And then from water, all types of things evolved. Now, in the Islamic tradition itself, by the way, there are a lot of narratives, and that's a very big question about the what's authentic, what's not authentic, and all of that. Narratives that the earth itself, before Adam and Eve, was inhabited, and there are indications that some Islamic narratives say that it was inhabited by jinn and animals. Other Islamic narratives say that it was inhabited by animals. Now, they don't call these animals dinosaurs, they just call them animals. But so that in itself is not a problem for the Islamic tradition. It is quite possible that Allah had created the earth, and this earth was full of beings. These beings are dinosaurs, maybe jinn, we don't know. And then a new chapter begins. And also, if you reread the ayat on Adam and Eve, Adam and Eve are the beginning of a certain type of human, but not the only type of human. So, if you read these ayat carefully, you see that they do not necessarily preclude the possibility that there were other intelligent like creatures. Creatures with a level of intelligence. Now, what level of intelligence creates a taklif, an obligation to know the maker? Well, let me simplify this. We know from Allah, from the Qur'an, that those who do not have a choice, in other words, the choice to believe or not believe in the maker, we are told that the birds, the animals, the trees, the plants, everything on earth, everything that is created by Allah, acknowledge the maker. يسبحون باسم الله يسبحون بالله, that they do tasbih, but you don't understand their tasbih. So they are either anchored in instinct or anchored in choice. If they're anchored in instinct, then there is no taklif, there's no accountability for failure to correctly exercise your choice. If they're anchored in choice, free will, then that's where accountability steps in. So, when you read about, and I've read both books that are pro-evolution, and I've read the modern scientists that point to various holes and inconsistencies in the theory of evolution. But as a Muslim, I don't feel like my so much turns on resolving this question. Evolution answers, and especially the process of natural selection, which is theoretically distinct from evolution. I mean, there are a lot of things in the theory of natural selection, a lot of questions are not answered. both in the creation of various forms of species and in the creation of more developed and sophisticated species. And a lot of the links that are found between one species and a hypothesis of development of that species to another can very speculative. It's based really on conjecture, not hard empirical evidence. So as a Muslim, I believe that when an animal adapts to its environment, it adapts because of Allah's will. When an insect becomes camouflaged like a leaf or a tree, while another insect doesn't, both are the product of Allah's will. When an insect builds a hive and another insect doesn't build a hive and builds a cobweb, or another lives underground and another lives in a tree, all of that is driven by the divine will. That this remarkable variety in the manifestation of living is a product of a magnanimous creator who drives all of that. Now, science then produces these skeletons of beings that, stood semi-erect, that had a certain skull size, that had certain jaw features, and science then draws conjecturally speculations about the brain capacity, about the feeding habits, about the cultural practices of these beings. What science often will not answer is whether these beings had free choice or instinct. If they're instinct, they belong to the realm of animal. And I think if there were Muslims who were actually engaged in these sciences, you would have find very much like when you read the Christian challenges to theories of evolution, and I'm talking about scientific challenges, not those who have a Christian theology, committed to a Christian theological outlook, challenging the science of evolution from a scientific perspective. I think a lot of Muslims could have produced that type of work if, in fact, there were enough Muslim scientists who were engaged in this field, who were interested in examining the evidence from the perspective of an Islamic tradition. Because they surely exist in the Christian world and in the Jewish world. Their books are available and easily accessible. So, again, to reiterate, Adam and Eve are the first human beings that are accountable, that inherited deputyship from the divine. They were the first to be contracted by God as the deputies of God on earth. But it doesn't mean that they are the first beings to be created. Beings, whether ape-like or more human-like, might and could have existed before, but they're not the object of taklif.